And the funding that the city so graciously provides to Johnson County Senior Services. Kim Smith, our director, has furnished you with some statistics that you can look at your leisure. They're not like last year, they've increased considerably. I can tell you that of all the donut counties, Johnson County is by far ahead of the rest of them in the per capita of seniors. If you're familiar with our senior community, there is a definite need there. And we've been providing that over a number of years now, and in the last 48 months, we've seen a drastic increase in the amount of service that we have to provide to our seniors. But probably of all of the segment of our society today, the most needy, not necessarily just in financing, but in food and medical equipment, and transportation, and probably more importantly than all of it, somebody who cares for them. There's a lot of our seniors out there living by themselves where they've lost their lifetime partners, struggling to make it in our community. We've been just at $10,000 for 14 years now, and I can tell you over 14 years the service we provide has outweighed that by multiples. Let me also say that any increase that you might find in your hearts to make for Johnson County Senior Services doesn't go to pay salaries, doesn't go to a profit of any sort. Every dollar we take in is just one more senior we're able to provide services for. So any money that we get does allow us to increase services going forward. Dr. Murphy's here this evening. He's the president of our board. I'd like to say that Dr. Murphy's the epitome of seniors. He's our poster child, 90-some years old, wonderful man, Methodist preacher for so many years. And he's going to give you just a brief insight as to what we do. Thank you again for allowing us to be here this evening. Dr. Murphy.
Thank you, Ron, and I'll pay you later. It's a difficult challenge to try to interpret to you folks the significance of what you're doing to help us. It was about 2004, 2005 that I approached Charlie Henderson and talked to him about Johnson County Senior Services, and he was very gracious, and the city council for all these years has been able to help us, but you had to keep it where it is, and I hope that you can think about what it's doing. In 1928, I came into this world, which was in the midst of a depression. My family knew the meaning of what it was to live on a very limited income with very limited food. The government had a commissary. We wouldn't use that word today, but they distributed food, and the best food we got was powdered milk and dried prunes. Folks, I don't want to see us go back to that today. When I walked down a particular aisle where some minimum wage employees work, and for 3 days in a row had someone stop me and say, "Thank you for bringing us the bread. That loaf of bread saved me $2. You don't know what that means to me." Friends, that's minimal to what we're doing. We do help keep a food pantry here in Greenwood stocked with food. It's important from the nutritional benefit of people who have low income and high expenses to get the kind of help that we're trying to do. Our biggest contribution to Greenwood is transportation. The Lord took my eyesight a couple of years ago, and I had to become a pedestrian, much against my will. And I want to tell you that our transportation for people coming into Greenwood to shop is important to you folk, and it's important as we take people to the doctor to a hospital, to different places, that we were able to transport them. And it is exceedingly important that we have, it costs us $40,000 a year to keep a car running with all of the added costs that come about to keep things going. I hope you understand that we have people in Johnson County, we have people in Greenwood who are on dialysis. If they do not have a way to get to the place where they receive their treatment, they die. And we are helping those people to stay alive. My wife's in the health center right now, and I know what it means to have a loved one who is dependent upon medical care to keep a person alive and have some type of quality of life as well as a quantity of life. I thank you very much. By the way, we are in need of a building too. If you happen to have a bigger building, we would be glad to listen to what you might have to offer us to help in that way, because our building now is limited. We cannot take on the extra work we need to do. So please keep us in your heart, your mind, and in your generosity. We are grateful for what you've done. We're asking you to help us, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question. Ron, what is your operating budget for 2019?
I think for 2019, we're about 440,000 total operating budget.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, I want to say how much I appreciate all of you showing up tonight and understand your passion for at least one item that's on the agenda. However, I've received a message from our fire marshal that we currently exceed the capacity of this building allowed by law. So we're going to ask as many of you as you can to step out into the foyer and so we can be in compliance. We won't keep anybody from speaking if you need to, but we do need to help clear the room a little bit. Yes?
There are seats in this room next door, and we can get IT to broadcast it on the TV. So however many seats are in this room next door. But as far as in this room, there's about 120 seats. Occupancy load, being generous, is about 150, so about 30 people can stand.
Okay.
But we
All right.
can get you in this room and put it on the TV with IT's assistance. Thank you, President.
All right, thank you. So if you would help us with this, we would truly appreciate it. Council, while some of them are leaving, all of you should have received a copy of the contract for services for the Johnson County Senior Services. As with the others that we had at our last meeting, the mayor's office and the council have worked together to set aside in the budget the $10,000 that we would give to the Johnson County Senior Services. So, any questions or discussions on that? Half of this would come from the council budget, half from the mayor's budget. So, see no discussion. I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract. So moved. Motion by Mr. Bates, second. Second. Second by Mr. Dine. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The contract is approved on a unanimous vote. All right. As I said, I'm glad and welcome each of you here, and I do know that this has been a passionate issue for many of you. And at this time, we're open the floor to members of the audience to address the council. But before we do that, address the council concerning items that are on the agenda. And since most of you are here about that, there is a 20-minute time limit on any single topic. It's not 20 minutes per side, it's 20 minutes. And so that will be strictly enforced. Just want you to know ahead of time. Also, it is a crowded room. There are plenty of people here. We would ask that you be respectful when someone is speaking, that you be quiet so that everybody can hear what's being said. I will say up front, so that everybody knows, that when we get to the agenda item, which is under ordinances and resolutions, the petitioner will be able to stand and make a presentation, and we've never had a time limit on that presentation. Typically they don't take that long, but just so you'll know, this different than the Plan Commission meeting, this is not a public hearing. The council we have our meetings in public by law, but it is not a public meeting. So who speaks and how much time is given is set. So we will follow those rules, just so everyone knows. And we would ask that you be courteous during the entire process. Also, just so everybody knows, once the vote is taken tonight, it is a one night, one vote item. The council has other business to take care of, which I'm sure most of you probably would not want to stay for. So after the vote, if you want to leave, feel free to do so. But again, we would ask that you do it quietly, because we will be moving on to other topics that are on the agenda. You're welcome to stay. We have some exciting meetings, but you're welcome to stay. And but just so everybody knows, how it works, so that there's no misunderstanding, we'd appreciate it if you'd help us with following these rules. So at this time, if anybody's here who would like to speak regarding Ordinance 1906, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And again, there's a 20-minute time limit total.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jackie Haynes. I reside at 2080 Woodsway Drive, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. I am a commercial real estate broker that has been in charge of marketing the Vineyards property at Worsville Road for the last 3+ years. I come to you with over 30 years of market experience. I work for some of the largest companies represented within our market. I'm a retail specialist. Most recently, I leased sold over 1 million square feet at the Anson Whitestown State Road 334 exit to hospitality, restaurant, retail, etc. So when I say that I'm a retail expert, I do mean that, not to tout my own horn, but to express my experience. I think that's important to understand. I have marketed this property to retailers. There has not been any interest from any of them, because there are not the demand generators over on that side of the interstate. So that has not been something of interest. I have never received any calls from retail users either for the property. Actually, the only calls I've received are for truck parking, which I know would not be consistent or congruent with anything that we have in the comp plan. So my understanding is the property is currently suburban fringe, that was a holding zone to wait until uses approached you for approval, and that the vision plan that was created 5 years ago called for this property to be the front 10 acres retail and the back institutional. The institutional placeholder was there to allow the Vineyard to build their church. If the Vineyard isn't building their church, institution would fall with schools, hospitals, or maybe other churches, and then the retail. The vision plan also gives several references to the fact that it is not, that these are placeholders. It is not a zoning. It is not currently zoned for retail. That is not where it sits today. It seems like there's been a lot of confusion, or maybe lack of clarity in what that vision plan has called for versus how the property is zoned today. So again, the plan references in several cases that it is there as a guideline. It is to also be adapted to market conditions and as the market dictates. So I go back to, I am very aware of market conditions and reacted to them accordingly up at the exit at 334 and 65, where we finally had a lot of explosive growth because the infrastructure was there. That development includes projects such as what Opus is proposing this evening, as well as projects that already exist at our Worsville Road, like the larger Amazon building, as well as multifamily, single family, and retail, and it all coexists together. So it is my professional opinion that this project is not going to harm future growth east of this site. It will continue to attract residential and other uses. This development will actually enhance the ability to do that because it will bring jobs and more people to the interstate, which in turn will bring housing, which in turn can bring retail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Matthew Smith, 450 Southgate Drive, Greenwood, Indiana. I'm a member of the Advisory Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and a recent addition to the Overlay Committee. And I'm here to talk to you about the Opus development and why I voted to give an unfavorable recommendation to the council. A few caveats here. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm not speaking as a representative in whole or part for the Advisory Planning Commission. This plot of land is zoned for residential commercial mixed use, and I understand that Vineyard Church is motivated to sell, and that no commercial or residential developers have, as of yet, as was stated, asked to develop this plot of land. I also understand that holding this land is a financial hardship for Vineyard Church, which I have empathy for. However, when given this choice on the Advisory Planning Commission and looking over our statutory criteria, there was one criteria I can honestly say that the Opus development did not meet, and it was statutory criteria number 4, that it would not injure property values of the land around it. In the Regional Studies Journal, a peer-reviewed article from May 2011 on the impact of industrial sites on property values, I'm going to quote the abstract from that paper here. It says, "The distance to an industrial site exhibits a statistically significant negative effect in the value of residential properties." Based on that, I could not vote in favor of a favorable recommendation to the council on the commission. But this is not the only reason that I voted as an unfavorable recommendation. There were many other reasons to oppose this, in my view. First is that it is a speculative development, which means any company, no matter how unsavory, that meets in a light industrial zoning can come and move into this development, and the community won't have a say. Also that it's my personal view, in my opinion, that industrial development begets more industrial development, not residential development. As we see, when one industrial development goes in, they don't put nice houses around it. And when you look at the map there, what we were shown was a slice of industrial development that was put there, and they want to say R3 surrounding it, and then R1 past that. I think it's very likely, if this is to go forward, that what you'll see on that corner of 65 and Worsville Road to the southeast there is a cascade of industrial development, and I don't believe that's the right use for that plot of land. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Elizabeth Choi, and I'm a member of the Vineyard Church. My sister Rebecca and I have been members since 2012, so for 7 years now. Rebecca is a teacher, I'm a journalist, as many of you know. The Vineyard is a place for professionals like us where we can go, we can fellowship, we can get spiritually nourished. But it's so much more than that. We also have another sister who is not just a diabetic, but she suffers from drug addiction. Everything from heroin to meth and everything in between. She has been so close to death so many times. And in her moments of sobriety, she often visits the Vineyard with us. It's a church that she can go to and not feel judged and feel welcome. not feel like she's being looked at in an odd way for her appearance or her life choices or her lack of employment. The Vineyard is a church that impacts so many people and does such good work in the community. Its motto is "Come as you are." So it doesn't matter if you are a professional, if you're in a situation like our drug-addicted sister. It doesn't matter if you're atheist or agnostic or where you rate on the socioeconomic scale. Everybody is welcome. And it's not that the Vineyard condones that type of behavior. It's that they want to love people and to a growing relationship with Christ. And I truly believe in the work that the Vineyard is doing. And I just ask that you guys, before making any kind of decision, consider all the people who are here to support the Vineyard and the impact that your vote will have, not just on our church, but also the community of Greenwood as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Randy Gooden, 1157 Central Park Boulevard, South Greenwood, Indiana, 46143. Before the other two gentlemen speak, I just wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention. First of all, you know I've been fighting for this area for over 4 years now to try and protect it and keep it from growth. And Vineyard, please understand, we're not against you rezoning. We're just against industrial rezoning. Pastor, thank you for your graciousness in hosting the meetings or facilitating them. Kevin, Doug, Becky, thank you all for your graciousness when you met with us and for taking the time to do that. We really appreciated it. Recently, in the Leadership Johnson County class, I had the chance to talk with Zach Chunry, who's the Johnson County representative for my tour. When I spoke with him and during his presentation, it was brought to our attention that currently Indianapolis regional area, including Greenwood, is underbuilt in housing by 1,750 units per year. With projected job growth over the next 20 years, that will shortchange the Indianapolis region by 35,000 plus houses. That's new construction. That's not counting what's already here. My board was not even aware that there was property out there for sale that could be developed into residential. Kelsey Farm or this property in particular. I spoke to him at length. He's offered to work with us to try and market this. So Vineyard, if you are defeated tonight, please understand, we will help you any way that we can, including advertising on our page. Take you to 561 people as of today that you can put your message out to, that we would like to see something different. We mean you no harm. I consider you a brother and sister in Christ. I would not do anything to try and harm you. Please understand. The lady that just spoke about her sister struggling with drugs. Madam, my daughter does the same thing. I understand the struggle. It's real to all of us. Churches are there for a purpose, and I am glad you're here. I am. I truly am. I understand what your mission is to minister here in the Greenwood region, and I support that. Any type of residential development, or to keeping suburban friends out there, whatever we can do, I would highly support. It's just this industrial, the negative impact that we can see that it's going to have to the neighbors, including things that are going to be mentioned, as well as the increased traffic, increased air pollution, increased noise, and increased light pollution. I'm going to yield my time so that others may speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick Hunter, and I own property directly to the east of the land in question in the Dobbins Bridge neighborhood. We don't have a legal address yet, as we are planning to build in that area. I just wanted to highlight some of the language that's used in the I-65 Worsville Road Road Land Use Plan, which is the most recent reflection of both what both the city and the community envision for this specific area. With regard to the intent and the purpose of this area, it is to, quote, be a key area for the city since it will function as its primary gateway to the south side of Greenwood and will serve the growing residential area and its commuters using the interstate. It is critical to establish high standards and a defined image for Greenwood's new front door and gateway. And the key is to create a lasting impression as soon as visitors exit the interstate and enter Greenwood. Nothing in this language supports having this area be built up for industrial use. The proposed project has been called a smaller or boutique project that has a retail element to it. It has been said that the retail landscape has changed nationwide and that this project adapts to that change. And though the church does provide service to the community, all of those points are irrelevant because the issue at hand is rezoning the land to industrial use. The Advisory Plan Commission staff report on this petition stated that, quote, "This development proposal will set the tone for subsequent development in the vicinity of this request." This is the same vicinity that just recently this council, the APC, and mayor deemed worthy of intervening and asking that proposal be withdrawn. That's the Facebook posting from the mayor's website. Now, it is vital that the council take the same stance on this petition in order to maintain the integrity of the city's plan, as the plan is already being threatened in other areas around Worsville Road. With this land, it has been said that there has been little to no interest to develop the land as planned, being that residential, institutional, or retail. The Vineyard Realtor will tell you that they have marketed the land to everyone, but I can tell you that just in the last week, we have discovered 2 institutional organizations that have been looking for land and had no idea the land was for sale, as Mr. Bidden just said. One of these being the Greenwood Christian Academy, who, after learning that the land was in play, asked directly for the realtor's contact information. And this is just one example of how the land has not been marketed appropriately to entities that would use the land for its intended purpose. Now, the land to the north of Worsville has already been rezoned, as you know, but I wanted to show this visual. Behind is what the plan was to be, and this is what has already changed. It's one thing to see it maybe on your computer screen, how things look now, but I wanted you to see how greatly it has varied from what it first started. And in the marketing materials for that land that has already been rezoned, it states, and I quote, "Greenwood is home to numerous industrial and manufacturing facilities. Certainly, this council doesn't want statements like that to be used in any context. Certainly, this council doesn't want the first image at its primary gateway now to be in excess of industrial warehouses. There is an assumption by developers that this land is up for grabs for industrial use. We must stand firm and show them that the city will adhere to its vision and its promise to the community. We are asking that this council hold true to the comprehensive plan by denying this petition and similar petitions for this area in the future." Thank you.
Thank you. There are 4 minutes left.
I'll make this quick. Thank you. My name is David E. Byer. I live at 3130 East 700 North Whiteland, right out in this area that we're talking about being rezoned. I would like to thank all the Common Council members for allowing me the opportunity to express the concerns of the many homeowners who actually do live east of I-65 and would be most affected if the request for industrial zoning is approved and allowed for these warehouses to be built. Last week I sent the Common Council 2 emails in an attempt to provide you some kind of data that would help support the negative effects on property value if these warehouses are allowed to be built on the south side of Worsville Road and east of I-65. 2 local south side appraisers, one of which who was appointed by the Johnson County Superior Court 1 during the acquisition of land for the Worsville Road interchange, and both appraisers rendered their professional opinions to these warehouses, and due to their close proximity to the existing homes, would have a negative influence on property values, in addition to limiting the amount of buyers who would want to own a home near warehouses. I also sent you the answers to a questionnaire that I sent to many local realtors on all 4 sides of Indianapolis with regards to homes that are located near warehouses and the marketability. Most every realtor answered the question the same. Warehouses located near homes do subtract from value. Buyers would prefer to purchase homes not near warehouses, and it would be harder to sell homes located near warehouses. Local realtor Mike Watkins Real Estate Group also submitted a letter confirming the same. I hope this information was helpful to you with answering the question, do warehouses built near homes have a negative impact on property values and hinder future marketability? Here's the good news. Tonight, the Common Council can put to rest all the questions regarding the comprehensive plan and simply vote no to stop the industrial zoning from coming south of Worstville Road. Let Worstville Road act as a natural buffer, and in doing so, this will let the general public, all the home builders, subdivision developers, commercial office building groups, schools, public and private, churches looking to grow, that industrial zoning will not be allowed now or any time in the future south of Worstville Road. This way, these individuals or groups can move forward with confidence and the assurances they need to invest in this area south of Worstville Road without the worries of warehouses being built right next to them. We homeowners who do live east of I-65 respectfully request a no vote from the Common Council to not allow industrial zoning of any land south of Worstville Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Minute and a half.
Minute and a half, I can do that. My name is Daniel McLaughlin, here with my wife, John McLaughlin. We are members of the Vineyard Church. We have been for 19 years. We live at 350 West Broadway, just right down the road here. I've been Bob's neighbor, I'm Ezra's neighbor. I work here, I live here. And one of the reasons that we live here, one of the reasons we moved back into Old Town Greenwood was because that's where my church home is. I know I see a lot of the people in here, they live in these neighborhoods too, or very close to here. And quite simply, I want a rezone vote, a yes vote, so that our church can stay there. It is a financial burden for us currently to hold that land. We need to rezone the land. We need a yes vote to be able to stay there. And, you know, the Vineyard is more than just us people going there. It's a foundation for this community. There's a lot of people who live here that get spiritually fed there. And we're a serving church. We serve others. We do things in the community. I think most of you probably know that if you do live around here. So I do understand the other side. I sympathize, but for me and mine and my family and my friends that live in this community and vote, we would ask that you would vote yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is all the time under audience request on this particular topic. If there's someone here that would like to address the council on a different item that's on the agenda, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. All right. I didn't think there was, but, you know, see none, then we'll move on to reports. Corporation Counsel.
You all should have received the semi-monthly item and the litigation report on the SharePoint, and if you have any questions about either of those, please contact me.
All right, anything from the controller at this time? You all should have received copies of my report from the last RDC meeting. I do apologize, I just sent that out today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Any other committee or board reports? All right, seeing none. Ordinances and resolutions. Notice of intent to consider ordinance number 1906.
An ordinance to amend the official zoning map adopted by reference in zoning ordinance number 82-1 as amended. Proposed rezoning and removal of approximately 52.239 acres from the South I-65 Worstville Road Overlay Zone District, sponsored by Dine.
You have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Alexi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill. Mr. Peoples.
Good evening, Bill Peoples. I'm the planning director for the city of Greenwood. I'm coming before you tonight to at least introduce this rezoning request. It's a rezoning request to rezone 52 acres plus about a quarter of that to the I-1 zoning district to allow for a industrial development on this property. The Plan Commission did hear this petition at its February 25th, 2019 public hearing, and it did forward an unfavorable recommendation on this particular request by a vote of 5-3. The petitioner is here to give you the details on it, but I did forward the staff report on this one, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, petitioner, would you like to explain the project to us?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. staff, and the public. My name is Andy Baroker. I'm an attorney with Fabry Baker Daniels. With me tonight to discuss this rezoning ordinance 1906 is Doug Swain with Opus, which is the proposed purchaser and developer of the land. Pastor Bricker with Vineyard Community Church, Luke Wessel, a commercial and industrial broker with Cushman & Wakefield, and myself. So you've seen the address, you know where that is, and again, your options under the state zoning code are approve the petition, deny the petition, or take no action, in which case after 90 days it's defeated. So we can get into that if there are any questions on that. Doug Swain with the Opus Group now. I'd like to describe to you the project.
Good evening. My name is Doug Swain. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Opus Development Company. Our address is 8801 River Crossing Boulevard in Indianapolis, Indiana, 46240. Opus Development Company is part of the Opus Group of Companies, a 65-year-old family development business based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're proposing to rezone approximately 50 acres owned by the Vineyard Church at the southeast corner of Worsville Road and I-65. Throughout this process, we've listened to what the residents, the Plan Commission, and you, the council, have said. And tonight we're putting forth a plan that has been revised to accommodate some of the current concerns that we have heard. We're proposing the development of 3 logistics and last mile delivery facilities. We're offering a commitment to position all 3 of these buildings with the docks to the rear of the buildings. So the office entrances will face I-65 and County Road 250. In addition to creating a more aesthetically pleasing project, we will also be eliminating an entire row of truck docks that was previously discussed, as well as reducing potential traffic. This project is very consistent with the overlay plan that was created several years ago. The buildings will function very similar to what was envisioned for this intersection. It will provide a good transition to the east and will still allow for future development to the east, whether it be retail, office, residential, or mixed use. I'd like to point your attention to several examples where logistics properties are located within close proximity of retail, housing, and office. That is a front facade rendering of a similar project. We would expect that to look very similar to the projects that we would propose to develop there at this site. I took a couple of quick aerials. This is an aerial of Noblesville. You can notice the white building to the north side of your site plan there. That's a 1.5 million square foot distribution industrial building, similar to much larger than what we're proposing, similar to what was proposed back several months ago. And you can see all of the residential that is surrounding that development and continues to be built in the Noblesville community.
What kind of residential is it?
Well, there's single family homes. There is, in Noblesville and in close proximity, there's multifamily developments. There's retail developments up and down that I-46, 146th Street corridor. There's a little mix of everything in what I would consider to be close proximity. This area is of Fishers. To note, up and down I-69 corridor, kind of in the middle of your screen there are several projects, multiple projects up and down that corridor. There are projects that feed into and are adjacent and in very close proximity to all types of retail development, residential, single family, multifamily. I mean, you can read some of the things that are going on in the Fishers community. There is projects similar to what we are proposing here in very close proximity, and Fishers continues to grow as a community. Finally, I put up there another aerial of Brownsburg. This looks, comes down and you can see the I-74 corridor. Kind of in the middle of your screen there, close to where the I-74 sign is, you'll see several much larger than what we're proposing here, cross-dock facilities, much different than we're proposing here, located in very close proximity to, again, retail, close proximity to residential, and you can see all the housing around there, and you can read some of the things that Brownsburg is doing as they continue to grow as a community. And finally, I'll just point to another final slide here. This is down in southern Indiana, and I bring this up for a couple of reasons. It's in an industrial park called River Ridge. Some of you may be familiar with it. To date, over 1,500 acres of industrial development has been completed there. And per a recent economic impact analysis, the development equates to $2.25 billion of local economic output. These companies have committed 10,000 jobs, supported more than 1,500 regional jobs, and generated $40 million of local income taxes since 2006. Last year alone, local governments received $6.4 million from this development. And adjacent to this development, directly to the north, which you can see there, which is outlined but not colored, River Ridge has partnered with a local developer to establish a 600-acre high office, technology, and research campus. It's a beautiful park, anticipated to be filled out with technology and office-type users. Infrastructure is being installed, and they have good interest from a variety of companies. All of this adjacent to a very large industrial park. And in fact, there is an office building that has been developed smack dab right in the middle of all the color that you see there in the building that is fully occupied, that's a part of River Ridge. So I appreciate the neighbors and the community input into this process. And from the very beginning, they've stated it's not so much about the project that they oppose, it's the industrial being developed on property to the east. And I would state that we're not here to talk about the project and the property to the east. I ask you tonight to approve this project. Let's not stop the progressive growth of Greenwood. This project will provide over $4 million of property tax revenue to the city over the next 10 years. Additional tax revenue will be earned as employees visit local restaurants and retail, and revenue that can be used to help realize the city's goals and continue to build upon the city's core, which will in turn attract more residents, business, retail, and restaurant. I'm not really sure how many people in this community are opposed to this project. We've held 2 public meetings. The last meeting we held only attracted 9 people, and a few have been vocal since the beginning, reside outside of the city. We've heard from numerous people that favor our development, and they're interested in more jobs and tax revenue for the city of Greenwood, and think that this use is consistent with what is envisioned for this intersection. A final thought to consider: please consider the fate of the Vineyard Church. As you may be aware, the current church building, and as we've heard tonight, is cross-collateralized with this property. If we're not successful, then the church will likely lose the building in Greenwood, and that would truly be a shame, as many parishioners who call this their church live throughout Greenwood. And in addition, again, as you've heard tonight, the church provides much needed services for those in the community who are less fortunate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Luke Wessel, and I'm with Cushman & Wakefield. I have 25 years of commercial real estate experience. Our heritage going back to the F.C. Tucker commercial days, having big roots to the community, to the city, and really giving back to civic duty. You've heard about the plan tonight. The proposed plan that Opus has on the table is very common, as Doug has mentioned, for locations that are at or near the interchange. I think that's one topic that has really been missed here that I've heard tonight, is that this site that they are proposing does sit on the interchange. And as you look at other communities like Fishers, Carmel, Whitestown, Westfield in particular, you're seeing this type of product that is smaller in nature be built right at these locations. The proposed facilities are very conducive to tech centers, quasi-retail, service centers, medical, and e-commerce. For example, up in Fishers, in one of these facilities, you'll even see a Sky Zone that brings children, families together during the week and on the weekends. That would be classified as semi-retail going into one of these facilities. These are not your large, big box, truck, manufacturing, dirty industrial facilities that I think maybe has been put into people's minds or in their thought process. The site itself, very simply, given its location, as you've heard before, has no demand for office or what we would call old school retail. And in my 25 years of commercial real estate experience in these other communities, would actually tell you the values of homes go up because you've got more jobs, you've got more service, and there's more people there in general. Interstate 65 is the driver, and there currently is a limited supply of land and available buildings in Greenwood, as there's less than 5% vacant in today's market in this, what we call the industrial sector. I believe you guys know this, there's a strong demand, and there's been a lot of lease up in this product in the Greenwood area. Lastly, I would say, and you've already heard this before, that there's $4 million worth of potential tax revenue over the next 10 years, which will get greater as time goes by. Again, that's additional jobs for your community, as we have seen this similar growth in other communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to have to finish with the attorney, but I thought it'd be useful or helpful, and I'll finish up with just the 5 statutory factors. Again, these, we put this before you in our petition. We had to address findings of fact, but just a couple of things. Complying with the comprehensive plan, as Luke said, you're along I-65, right? There wasn't an interchange there 3 years ago. There's now an interchange there. There's been water line extended south to only 1,300 feet away. There's going to be a stoplight at Worthville and Collins Road. If you bring those things, development will come. There's a cost to keeping it green, but when you sort of put the welcome mat out and say, here are all these things that employment nodes and industrial users and distribution needs, that's why it's on along the interstate and other parts of Greenwood. The second point, item number 2, it complies with the current conditions and the character of the current structures. Again, it's changed in 5 years. The current conditions are, there's an interstate interchange there. This is immediately adjacent to the interchange. There are other industrial along 65 that is adjacent to the interchange. That draws employment nodes, commercial users, commercial taxpayers, because it's along the interstate. That has changed. So the current conditions call for that to be the case. It's the most desirable use for which the land is adapted. Again, when you have utility, traffic, and road improvements like you put out there to draw things, they will come, and we believe that this use, Opus is a developer in the city of Greenwood. It's built other projects in Greenwood that have leased up. They're attractive. We work with the city on architectural standards, and we think they're fabulous. Now, Mr. Smith spoke about this statutory factor number 4, and I want to be clear on this, on what the state law says on this. It's not that it affects neighbors adversely, will not affect the property values throughout the jurisdiction, throughout Greenwood. So again, other property owners a half mile to over a mile away are not in the jurisdiction. They're not in Greenwood. And if you drive out there and try to imagine this facility buffered next to the interstate adversely affecting a half mile or mile away residential areas where there are many, many fields, many, many trees, it's just not reasonable to say that they are adversely affected by this use immediately adjacent to the interstate. So when you think the church paid $2,050 in property taxes last year, and next year if it's built or the year after fully built out, it'll be over $4 million over 10 years, $900,000 in 1 year, that doesn't affect property values adversely in the jurisdiction of Greenwood. That's in Greenwood. That's an enormous benefit to property values in Greenwood, we assert. There was a mention about a cascading effect. Here shows the X where this property would propose to be built. The green is the city corporate boundary of Greenwood currently, right? So unless Greenwood annexes east and south or takes utilities, invests in utilities further east and south, the cascading stops here. This is the far southeast corner of the city of Greenwood. There's no cascading unless you say so. This is in the far southeast corner. There can't be development any further south, right? The Kelsey Farm is just south of this line. They're auctioning all their equipment next month, if you've seen the sign. So we're in the far southeast corner. I don't know, unless Greenwood decides we're going to annex or extend utilities, that there's some great cascading effect a mile outside or east or south of this area where the residents reside who we're here and speaking to you this evening. So to conclude, we think we meet the statutory factor that it's responsible growth, right? You've invested in infrastructure, a road, a stoplight, utilities. The infrastructure is being further widened just to the east of this on Mooresville Road. To your credit, you're investing in that. You ought to expect a return on that investment by a significant property taxpayer putting something there, and Opus is ready to go there today. Many other uses won't be there for quite a long time. So we respectfully request that you approve the petition and give us a favorable vote. We're here for questions. Thank you, members of the council.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Dean Bricker. I live at 1256 Baroque Circle, Greenwood, Indiana. I am the founding and senior pastor of Vineyard Community Church. 16 years ago, we purchased 52.4 acres of property at the southeast corner of Worsville Road and Interstate 65 with hopes of one day building a mega campus there. Unfortunately, there were no utilities to the site, and so we put it on hold. Then, meanwhile, we used the property as collateral to purchase the building that we're currently meeting in, the 62,000 square foot facility at 512 South Madison Avenue here in the heart of Greenwood. We purchased the building for nearly $2 million and did an additional $2.5 million renovation to make it acceptable for the community and make it attractive for the people. And so we have a debt load at that time of about $4.5 million. We as a church have experienced wonderful growth throughout the years. We're a very diverse group, and we attract a lot of the people that, quite frankly, wouldn't feel comfortable going to any other church. And I'm grateful for that. And along with that, people who do not have the financial means to contribute. And so we are in a position today that we're asking a favorable decision of rezoning the property because we want to sell our Worsville Road property so that we can nearly completely retire our debt load, and we can make the necessary improvements on our current facility, add staff, and better serve the people here in Greenwood. We have approximately more than 2,000 people who consider the Vineyard their church home. We have about 700 families here in the Greenwood area, and we support our mayor and the city council and the Greenwood 2020 vision, and we want to be in step with and right in the heart of what's happening here in Greenwood and serve the people of Greenwood. I have had an opportunity over the last few weeks to sit in a number of meetings, neighborhood meetings, and listen to what's going on. And let me just first of all just say this. God bless each of you council members. I have such a greater appreciation for the time that you put into this, your care, your concern, and just the heaviness, the weight of what you do. And so thank you very much for all that you do. And in this, what I've discovered is that much of the talk has been about feelings and the fear of change and the fear of the future, of that of uncertainty, and not on the facts. The fact is, we do own the property. We need to sell the property. We have a purchase agreement to sell the property. And this will make a huge difference in the way we're going to be able to serve the community, not only in this generation, but in generations to come. And I would ask each of you council members to take into consideration not the fact that it's an election year or the fears that have been voiced for so many different people, but to take into consideration the 50,000 Greenwood residents and how they will benefit from this project. We as a church in our database have more than 17,000 families that have walked through the doors of our church. And we've served the 145,000 people in Johnson County and beyond, and we're committed to the community. And it is our desire to stay where we are and to be able to improve what we do and to much better serve the community. And so I ask that you would take this into consideration and that you would go with the conviction of your heart based upon the facts and not fear, and not the fear of the unknown and the fear of change, but on the facts that are in front of you at this time. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Any discussion on the council or questions for the petitioner?
I just have a quick, I made a little statement because I just didn't want to make sure I didn't want to forget anything. I represent District 2, which this project affects in 2 different ways. And so this really hasn't been an easy decision for me, but you know, I appreciate everyone coming out and getting involved and you know, taking everything into consideration. This has been a tough decision to make. I've taken all opinions into consideration and viewed all information that's been presented to me. I also have met with Opus, the Vineyard, and residents on several different occasions in regard to this matter. And I've received a lot of emails. So much my email is full. And so if you emailed me and it bounced back, I apologize, but that's just that's what happens. When you get passionate about things, people step up and get involved. That being said, my decision to support the rezoning tonight is because I believe Opus is offering a quality design as well as bringing jobs in the community. I'm hoping this project will spur some other economic activity into the area. And no, this does not mean I'm supporting industrial rezoning farther east or south of Worsville Road. I've heard that message loud and clear, and if at all possible, want to stick with the recommendation of the comprehensive plan in that area going forward. The particular rezoning has an impact in 2 different ways, in 2 different areas within District 2. Of course, the southeast area as well as the Vineyard, which is in the middle of District 2. The rezoning of this property will allow the Vineyard to continue to expand its outreach not only within District 2 but also the rest of Greenwood and beyond. The good deeds of the Vineyard and what they do for the community far outweigh the cons of this rezoning. So I'll be voting in support of this request, and again, I do not agree with the idea to continue rezoning industrial east and south of Worsville Road, and I certainly do not agree with the statement that doing this for Opus means we have to do this for everyone else. I review each decision brought before me independently. So that being said, I just ask each council member to take what I said into consideration before you make your decision.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I've got a question. Everybody's talking about how many jobs this is going to create. Do you have any amount of jobs and the pay structure for that?
This is what we call an ahead of need project, so we build it ahead of need, ahead of when the tenants come into town, so we don't have an exact know of what is going to be there in terms of jobs, but we can tell you from past experience as we have continued to have built these similar projects in other locations, we would expect potentially anywhere from 200 to 300 jobs would probably be what we would expect that this entire project would create.
And at what kind of wage structure?
It varies. You know, you've heard a lot about, and I've sat in some of these meetings and heard a lot about different pay structures, and a lot of it as it relates to, you know, kind of the warehouse workers and some of the buildings and facilities that are north of Worsville Road. I would say in general, because these are smaller buildings, they tend to have a little higher office component. And as Luke mentioned, they can even have quasi-retail, they can have tech centers. In that office requirement, you may see a couple of salespeople for a regional medical distributor. It'll tend to push those wages, average wages up. Again, we don't have any way of knowing exactly what that'll be, but if you say that the wages that are north of Worsville Road in a typical, you know, pick-pack distribution facility was, you know, $18 an hour, then you could expect that this likely would be maybe a little higher than that. Again, you know, that's just kind of directional guidance just based on what other projects that we've developed.
All right, any other questions or discussion?
Mr. President,
I'll go on, Ron.
Go ahead. Hi, Joe.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I spent my St. Patrick's Day going door to door in Southlake, which is the neighborhood west of 65, one of the closer neighborhoods in the city of TV to this development. And almost exclusively, everyone I spoke to is against this development, and most of them did not know about any of the informational meetings that Opus had. So I don't know how you went about having that, but as an at-large representative, I just can't think of District 2. I have to think the whole city and the effects that this has on the whole city and what all my constituents think. So I mean, that's why I'm going to vote against it tonight. And I asked you at the meeting what you thought about the pay scale or what people might be making an hourly, but I mean, that's all really kind of a guesstimate. With other areas you've done this with, you don't really have hard numbers, correct?
That's correct, because we don't have a tenant that's associated with it.
Mr. Bates?
President, a few feeble comments that I would like to make here tonight. Start out with to be or not to be is a famous line of Shakespeare's Hamlet. We, and that is the city council, common council, were tasked with deciding the fate and future growth of the east side and south of I-65 corridor. To be sure, there are valid arguments on both sides of the issue here tonight. There are good folks arguing for or against the rezoning of said property. Not everyone will leave here happy tonight. As Abraham once said, thinking that is, you can please other people all the time, and all the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. And I think that's so true. Taking into consideration the public meetings that's been had, the Plan Commission recommendations, and the comprehensive plan for the city all the way up through the year 2027, I can only conclude that the rezoning of this property is not in the best interest of the city. That being said, if this ordinance does fail tonight, then it may pass. I don't know. I haven't talked to any other counselors. I'm making an independent decision here. I strongly suggest that the petitioner go back to the drawing board and find a suitable land use for said property in a suburban fringe zoning classification. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I think all of us on the council have received numerous emails. I will say that I have read every email, listened to every voicemail message, and I got a letter in the mail too. And I have not answered any of them. There are too many. But I have listened and read all the contact information, all the information I've been given. So with that, any other discussion on the council? All right, we're about to take a vote, and as Mr. Bates just said, we're not going to make everybody happy, and so I appreciate the way you've conducted yourselves so far this evening, and would appreciate that after the vote, regardless of how it goes, that you continue to conduct yourselves in the same manner. If you choose to leave, please do so quietly. As I said earlier, we have other business to take care of tonight as well. All right, roll call. Ordinance 1906.
Armstrong.
Nay.
Bates.
Nay.
Campbell.
Yay.
Dine.
Nay.
Foster.
Nay.
Gibson.
Nay.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Nay.
And Lexi.
Nay.
Ordinance 1906 fails to pass on a vote of 7-2. First reading, there is none. Second reading, ordinance 1904.
An ordinance vacating private access easements located at 736 Lowe's Boulevard, sponsored by Bates and Gibson.
We have a motion for second reading on ordinance 1904. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bates, motion by Mr. Hopper. This is scheduled for a public hearing, so if anyone will open it up for a public hearing, anyone wishing to speak for or against ordinance 1904, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Campbell, could we hold on till?
Yeah, I was going to give them plenty of time, so.
I was on the phone with my wife once we dressed today, so part of my routine could be interrupted. I forgot my pen.
You're wearing a different suit.
I think that's
we were shocked.
Gotta mix it up a little bit once in a while. I'm branching out, you know, had a beer. No,
I know,
you guys all people off.
Okay, we are in a public hearing. If you are here and would like to speak for or against ordinance 1904, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. See none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Peoples.
I'm for it.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
I'm a hunter for Greenwood, and I gave a presentation on this at the last meeting. I won't belabor the points. It's the gun range. We own 3 lots near the gun range. There are 2 easements, access easements. We'd like to vacate, well, there's 3 of them. We'd like to vacate 2 of them to secure the gun range and then to eliminate a superfluous easement. We're going to make some improvements to the multifamily residential projects behind the gun range in these lots to enhance their access while we eliminate their access through the gun range parking lot. Again, we're just doing this so we can increase the security and access control of the gun range. I gave the long presentation at the last meeting. I haven't answered any questions that you have.
All right, any discussion on the council? See none, roll call. Second reading, ordinance 1904.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson. Aye. Hill. Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
And Armstrong.
All right. Ordinance 1904 passes second reading 9-0. Ordinance 1905.
An ordinance amending the 2019 solid ordinance, common council ordinance number 1823, to add an additional assistant city attorney position to the legal department, sponsored by Campbell and Gibson.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Bates. Second, Mr. Dine. Any discussion? Ordinance 1905.
It's really not fair when you bring the toddler in here to get your ordinance.
Mr. Mayor.
Call me a toddler. Thank you.
Would you like to talk to us?
No, I was gonna say that Kelsey had came in earlier to meet up with everybody, but she kinda got lost in the crowd.
Yes.
I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the mayor? If we pass this tonight, when will she start?
April 1st.
April 1st? Is that a joke?
It's weak,
Okay.
real weak.
Yeah. I thought that was National Mayor Day. I wasn't sure. I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I should treat you with greater respect. Yeah, that's true. Any further discussion? Ordinance 1905. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Seeing none, roll call. Second reading, ordinance 1905.
Campbell.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
And Bates.
Aye. Ordinance 1905 passes second reading 9-0.
And your city attorney thanks you very much.
You're welcome. Resolution 1902.
A resolution declaring certain area within the city of Greenwood an economic revitalization area and qualifying certain real property improvements for tax abatement and setting the time and place for a public hearing. Bethnell Industrial, South Tech Business Park, Building 2, sponsored by Hopper and Campbell.
Do you have a motion? We have a motion, Mr. Hopper. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dine. Any discussion, or I'm sorry, Mr. Sherman?
I'm here to answer questions, Mr. Campbell, so if there are
Any questions for Mr. Sherman?
This time was used up earlier.
I'm sorry, I'm signing stuff. Give me a second here. Any discussion on the council? Seeing none, roll call, second reading, resolution 1902.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson. Aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Nay.
Bates.
Aye.
And Campbell.
Aye. Resolution 1902 passes second reading 8-1. Resolution 1903.
A resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the City of Greenwood and Pleasant Township, Johnson County regarding fire protection, sponsored by Gibson.
Do you have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bates, second by Ms. Gibson. Any discussion? Resolution 1903. Seeing none, roll call. Resolution 1903, second reading.
Foster.
Aye.
Gibson.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
And Dunn.
Aye. Resolution 1903 passes second reading 9-0. New business, introduction to new ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 1904.
A resolution declaring certain real property improvements and personal property for tax abatement, Berry Good Holdings LLC and California Custom Fruits and Flavors Inc., sponsored by Hopper and Campbell.
Good evening, Dana Monson, Johnson County Development Corporation. I'm here tonight to introduce a wonderful new opportunity for you that is coming to the city of Greenwood. I would like to introduce Mr. James Fragnelli with California Fruits. This is a new company that will be coming here and establishing business in the Greenwood 65 Park off of Graham and Collins Road. I'm going to let Mr. Fragnelli tell you about the project and answer any questions that you have.
It was good, I can vouch for it.
There it is. Yeah, that's it. There it is.
First of all, I just want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you today. It's like my fourth time back here, and it's 3 out of 4 on the weather. First, I want to give you.
Excuse me, let me interrupt. You came out here today from California, is that correct?
That is correct.
From Southern California?
Correct.
And you like our weather. All right, I know you've traveled a great distance, and we appreciate that. I thought it'd be nice if everybody understood that you had come a long distance to be here tonight.
Yes, and I had to run through the airport to make sure I got here on time and to wait for an hour.
It's like that every council meeting we have.
Well, I just want to give you a little bit of insight on what we do. We're a manufacturing company. We create value-added processed fruits for yogurt, ice cream, bakery fillings, things of that nature. We've maximized our facility in California. Back in 2013, the first time I started measuring it by state, 17% of our business was east of Mississippi. By 2017, it was 34%. And by July last year, it was 49%. So this is as much about growth in the East as it is about retaining business on the East Coast due to logistics. And 3 of our largest 4 customers are based in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, and whatnot. So as I researched different states planning on us going to Ohio or Kentucky or Tennessee, every single time I did my research, it kept pointing to the same thing. Go to Indiana, go to Indiana. #1 business-friendly Midwest state for taxes, most highways and byways, #1 manufacturing employment pool, and also the second best workers' compensation rates in the U.S. So everything kept pointing to it, and the next thing I know, we're buying a plot of land in Greenwood. The company was founded in 1986 by Terry and Roseanne Hall. Terry Hall passed away in 2003 when they were expanding into our current facility, which is about 85,000 square feet. It's still owned by the Hall family. It's going to be passed on to the grandchildren who are currently working for the company. It's time for us to grow it to a second facility, because another problem we have is we need duplicity, because some of the bigger customers are going, what happens if your plant fucks up? So they want us to have a second facility. But we don't stock any items, nothing's off the shelf, everything is custom made to the request of the customer. As I mentioned, we're primarily in the cultured dairy area. We also do some cream cheese, things of that nature. We also do some food service. like coffee houses, pumpkin spice latte, things of that nature. We provide the pumpkin flavoring. We're one of the few companies in our industry that has certified flavor chemists on staff. That's what gives us an advantage. There's only 500 certified flavor chemists in the U.S. We have 2 of them, which gives us a real advantage. As I mentioned, we do fillings for industrial bakery products. You know, a lot of the cereal bars you see, Kellogg's, that kind of stuff. We do a lot of that for like Trader Joe's and Aldi's and Walmart, things of that nature. And then, one of our other things, like I mentioned, is flavors. We also do our own flavors, so we'll sell outside flavors to businesses as well. We have a very significant product development group, which is why a lot of the Krogers of the world, things of that, come to us because they'll utilize our R&D group to develop products for them when they have their ideas, Baskin-Robbins. We sell across, not just across the U.S., we sell to Japan, we sell to Korea, we sell to Panama, we sell to Mexico, we sell to Canada. We're certified SQF, level 2. We have very strict allergen controls, on-site microbiological testing. And as I mentioned, some of our competitive advantages is that because we're privately held, we have extremely low overhead. We are rarely beat on pricing. And as a result, between that and being a custom manufacturer and willing to do smaller batches, we range a multitude of sizes of companies, from companies that might order 4,000 pounds a year to a company that orders 6 million pounds a year. We don't have a restriction. Some of the major players in the industry will require a 10,000 pound order, or will go down to 1,000 pounds. Sustainability, we only use electric forklifts, no gas burning. We recycle everything, our pails, cardboard, everything we have gets recycled. Where our current facility is all, lighting is all LED. We're gonna have the exact same thing in this facility. We've been receiving municipal awards for reductions in water and electricity usage. You can actually see that on our website. We were also named we're the only manufacturing supplier. We named Supplier of the Year award for Schreiber Foods, which is quite a big deal because they have very strict guidelines. So now getting to the Greenwood expansion, this expansion would bring right out of the gate 18 full-time positions. I talked here about a total of 24 by 2023, but we've already are talking about a second shift, so basically there's a likelihood that these numbers will double by 2023 versus just growing the first shift. That's primarily because the second we told 2 of our major customers that we're going to build it, they've been telling us that they'll give us the business if we build it. We've been saying, give us the business, we'll build it. We finally said, okay, we give up. We're going to build the thing, and 2 of our major customers have already said they're going to be giving us a lot more business. We estimate at least 4 million pounds. We'll have, it'll include 1 manager position, 1 lead, 9 manufacturing positions, 4 material handlers, sanitation, quality control, front office. We offer great benefits. All positions will receive medical, dental, vision, 401k, PTO, full gamut. We have an excellent benefits package that they'll receive. With Scanel, the intent is to build a 65,000 square foot facility, expandable to 130,000 feet. That's why the lot we're acquiring is 8.5 acres, give or take. And we're designing it such that we would easily be able to knock down 1 side wall and push it out. We're anticipating that to happen probably in about 5 to 10 years down the road. The real property improvements are going to be $9,250,000. Personal property investment will be about $3 million. And so it's going to be the smallest building probably in the entire section, but you can see the green building there and on the picture, and you can see how we've got it such that it's going to expand out down the road. So what we're requesting for the abatement is a 10-year real property abatement starting at 100 and then escalating down 95, 80, 65, and so forth. And then on the personal property abatement, we're also asking for a 10-year abatement, dropping 10% increments per year. When you look at it, even with the abatement, it'll still generate $1 million annual real property tax of $198,000 once the abatement term ends. And the annual personal property tax will be roughly $65,000 once the abatement ends. So with that, that's what I have for you today. If I can answer any questions, if anybody has any.
Any questions?
When you come back, could you bring some samples with you?
I can probably do that. I can make that happen.
I would like to welcome you and thank you so much for choosing Greenwood. I have a couple of questions for you aside from your company.
Sure.
Because you said that you wanted to find something east of the Mississippi, could you tell us the two things that caused you to zero in on Greenwood?
Well, actually, all I did is I started looking for what they deemed the business-friendly estates in the Midwest. And they came out and from a tax perspective, Indiana was like, I think it was 7 or 9. And the next closest was like 17, and I think it was Kentucky. And I just started doing research on, okay, highways and byways and things of that nature. One of the interesting things I found out in my research was that Indiana is the only state that can hit all 4 corners of the U.S. in under 48 hours by truck. No other state can do it. And we just kept looking and looking, and the funny thing is, we ship to probably 42, 43 states in the U.S., and the one state we don't ship to is Indiana. So it's like, well, why are you coming to Indiana? It's like, well, hopefully we'll find some customers while we're here. But everything just kept pointing to it, and we really didn't, we went into it thinking, you know, it's going to be Ohio or Wisconsin. Schreiber wanted us, they wanted to be able to put their thumb on us and have it built right next to them. And Kroger wanted us to build next to them, and we said, no, we want to be independent. And as we kept researching, it just kept popping up. Everything kept popping up. Indiana's ahead of all the rest in the Midwest. And it just worked out because we wanted something that was central. We wanted to be able to easily get to the Northeast because there's a lot of opportunities in upstate New York and Pennsylvania and whatnot. And of course, our biggest customers in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So we wanted something that was very close to them, yet we could hit the Southeast. We just landed a big account in the Southeast. And so there was a lot of opportunities and it just made the most sense.
Well, thank you. You know, we talk about we need to broaden our commercial base, and I just wondered if there was anything in our quality of life or whatever that caused you to actually zero in on Greenwood. But thank you for coming.
But that is the reason we zeroed in on Greenwood, because when we came here, Greenwood wasn't even on the radar. We were looking up at Comfort, up at Whitestown, Lebanon, and so forth. And when we were doing our tour with the realtor, we went to the spot that we're looking at now, and when we were done, we independently went back to the office and said, okay, rank it, which one you like best. And we both came to the exact same conclusion that Greenwood was the location that we wanted. And again, that wasn't even on the radar when we arrived. It just ended up being the one that we ended up choosing.
Are we recording this?
We need to send a copy of this to the governor.
At the very least, Secretary Schillinger and President Beadle would think they would watch you on camera saying those exact same things about Indiana. So.
Do you have a question for him?
So my standard question is, what can we do to get your entire corporate business over to the headquarters here to Greenwood?
I was thinking,
always my question.
Since you're growing and getting close to 50% of your business will be east of the Mississippi, Greenwood would make a great location for you.
I do know that you said if you were to consolidate businesses, it would be here to Greenwood as opposed to
I was going to reinforce that. That's the reason we want to be expandable to 130,000 square feet. I do actually think there could come a point in time when all manufacturing is done here.
Any further discussion or questions?
I'm trying to go for a little less than the whole thing. Since you do have 2 certified employees, how about bringing one of them out here for the R&D?
Well, we're going to have R&D out here eventually. Right now, from a flavor standpoint, because it's the way you manufacture, we want to manufacture barrels at a time or a container at a time. Where that flavor manufacturing will stay in Irwindale, and we'll just be shipping it out to Greenwood to go with manufacturing process through. But I know that the young guys that are coming up through the ranks, they want everything to be out here. That's their goal eventually. But the current regime, no, we're too old, we're not gonna relocate at this point. Once that transition takes place in about 5 years, I think a lot of the transition will move to Indiana. It's just so much more, makes more economic sense, not just because of the cost. Workers' compensation in California is the worst in the country. It's terrible. There's a lot of advantages to moving the entire workforce out here.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Are you familiar with Purdue University and their research and development in this area by chance?
No, the only familiarity I have with Purdue is the Boilermakers football and basketball.
Purdue has done a lot of research and development in this exact area. They're our ag school.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think they'd be interested in talking with you.
Absolutely.
Yep. They probably give you some interns on the cheap.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from the council?
I am a little confused. The map that we have, I didn't have enough information to know exactly where this is.
It's in the Amazon part.
It's kind of
It's
across the
just
street
south
from
of
Amazon.
Our new
On
the
Graham.
big Amazon building we're building off of Graham.
Yeah.
So it is on the south. It would be the south corner of that. The
Okay.
new Stacy's Way, which is the new east-west road south of Amazon. So it's on the corner of Stacy's Way and Graham Road.
Okay.
And though we have to compete against Amazon, it's probably gonna raise the average rate from, we're anticipating about $18 an hour. It's probably gonna raise it because our work's gonna be a little bit harder than working at Amazon, so we're probably gonna have to go higher on the wages than we anticipated, but.
And more fulfillment.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Fragnoli, will you, if I understood it, you will not be able to be here at our next meeting, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, but you will you be able to be here for the final meeting if we?
I'll be here to
Okay,
represent.
all right. I know you're traveling from California, so we understand. I just wanted to make sure the council knew that, so they wouldn't expect you here. All right, thank you.
Based on the fact that he did come this distance, I would make a motion to suspend the rules for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion to suspend the rules on resolution 1904 through first reading by Mr. Armstrong, second by Ms. Gibson. Any discussion on suspension? Seeing none, roll call on suspension, ordinance 1904.
Gibson.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Rules are suspended through first reading. Do I have a motion for first reading?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bates, second by Mr. Lexi. Any discussion on first reading ordinance 1904? Seeing none, roll call, first reading ordinance 1904.
Hill.
Resolution 1904.
Hill. Hopper.
Aye.
Lexi.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Dine.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
And Gibson.
Aye.
Resolution 1903, or 1904 passes first reading 9-0. All right, resolution 1905.
A resolution declaring certain real property improvements for tax abatement, GLA Properties 2 LLC, sponsored by Hopper and Campbell.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Katie Kolb. I'm president of KSM Location Advisors. It's good to be back before you this evening. I was joking back earlier in the meeting that I felt a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So I'm not the awesome food manufacturer, but we're also appropriately zoned and having a land use request. So, I mean, hopefully that fits in somewhere. But forage isn't too hot or too cold, just right. But it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I know you'll see some familiar faces. Courtney Lehman's going to be up in a minute to talk a little bit about the specific project we have before you today, and then and some other pieces about Scanal, and then I'll circle around. But I am here this evening to talk about a specific project. It is we are requesting property tax abatement for a speculative development, which I know is a concept that has been considered very thoughtfully by this group, by the mayor and his team. And as a result, we got a lot of candid feedback in trying to do our homework for tonight. We're going to approach this a little bit differently than we have with some other tax abatement hearings. I'll jump right into what our request is, and then I'm going to turn it over to Courtney to talk about the project. And then we thought we would kind of address directly some of the common concerns that we've heard about spec abatement with an attempt to kind of fuel it with at least some statistics and so that you all can make a really informed decision. Our request today will be for a 10-year real property tax abatement with a slightly modified schedule for roughly a 541,000 square foot speculative development building. It's going to be adjacent to the Amazon development. We have a picture in a second that will kind of outline the project. The anticipated real estate investment is just about $26.5 million, and the current property taxes on the ground alone is about $6,000 a year. With this abatement, and I know this group knows it, but for the audience and anybody watching at home, property tax abatement is, I hate the term because it's really a bit of a misnomer. It kind of implies that there's a tax holiday or something for some period of time, when in fact, even with real property tax abatement, as you know, an owner will pay taxes on the land. They will be paying real property taxes. It's just going to be graduated and increasing over time. And then, of course, equipment that comes in would, if it were to receive abatement, there would also be taxes generated on that. What's important to know about spec abatement and about most of these where you have a landlord or a developer is that all of these benefits are passed through to the user. So the user who goes into that building is responsible for the property tax bill, and that would be the situation here. So they will be paying it directly. I've included the schedule, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then just overall, even with the abatement, kind of to the point earlier about it being a phase-in of tax liability over time, you'll see that if you were to support this project, that over a 10-year period, although there would be significant savings to the user, which would allow Skinell to attract a quality tenant, they would also pay over $2.2 million in real property taxes, according to this schedule and the projected investment. So with that, I will turn it over to Courtney for a minute, and then I'll be back.
Thanks. Good evening. I'm familiar with most of you, all of you, and appreciate the opportunity here. I guess what I wanted to do for a second here was, we've got the park plan up, and obviously plans change, things happen, and when we had the FedEx project pulled out from under the rug and we were halfway through acquiring all this property, I sat with Bob Skinell and said, oh boy, what are we doing now? And so we made the commitment over a year ago to continue with the acquisitions because the homeowners deserved it. And at the time, we were focused in on, let's get some build-to-suits in here, let's still focus in on some manufacturing. We were able to get the Amazon project in, which was great. To kick off and get some of the infrastructure going. But at the same time, we were looking around saying, look, there's two existing buildings that are for lease. They were about the same size, about 500,000 square feet. Opus had one, and Van Trust had one, and it doesn't make sense to build another one if there's availability. It's just the supply and demand, right? So over the last 6 months, both of those buildings are being leased and will be off the market. And so we looked and sat and said, okay, in this Greenwood market, there's not a building that could be at home for over 250,000 foot of any business. So if Jim wanted to bring 300,000 feet of fruits, it couldn't go to Greenwood unless he could do the timeline, which he is, of a build-to-suit. Not everybody has that timeline to wait for a specific project. And so, as Katie mentioned, the tax abatement is very important in the real estate world. And I say just in the business world, not even the real estate, in the business world, these businesses are looking for a home, and when this tax abatement has to be there for them to pay less taxes. It's not money in the developer's pockets. It is your signal to the market saying we want businesses to grow and move into Greenwood, and therefore the tax abatement is an incentive for someone to be there. Now, I'm very aware and have had a lot of discussions with the mayor about what's the wage rate and what we're trying to do in Greenwood. I will say this, I've got more land and I want to build more projects, and I'm very aware that we don't want to have just warehouse jobs at low wages. That is not the intent. And the intent is to bring manufacturing. It's a mixture of gyms. It's a mixture of having some of those and some product for people who can't wait. And so it's important to have a mixture of both. And we're still pursuing manufacturing. We've got a couple tenants I can't talk about, but we're in the mix for someone to be next to Jim, auto parts manufacturing company. So we're going to continue as Skanell as a group to look for all those things that give variety of basket of goods. There's not a speculative building available on the marketplace, and so therefore that's why we're trying to move forward with this. We do need the abatement. I will be clear. I can't build a building without the abatement. I can't attract the tenants. My rents are just too high compared to others with that. I'm going to breeze through just some quick where we've been in the last 18 months. This is the building. It is flexible for parking. It is flexible for e-commerce. The south wall could adjust if we had someone who wanted a little more space. The idea here is probably a 2-tenant, maybe someone who's 300,000 feet, and then another tenant can take the remainder of the building. We've got future parking on the side. A lot of flexibility, but obviously, and this is tucked back away from I-65. So further away, Jim's location is in the front of the park. I'm trying to get the manufacturing, the fruits, those folks to be closer toward the interstate and put the bigger boxes in the back. So if I can go back, actually. So it's the green one on this side. Further back along Collins Road.
And Jim's is the...
Jim's is the, yeah, it's the, that's right, exactly. Yep, that's Jim. And they're going to purchase that. We're helping him go through the development process since he's in California. We're going to be on the site every week, kind of helping him develop that and build as if it was our own, but he's going to own that. Which some developers won't sell. Look, we want to do whatever's best for Greenwood. We'll sell some, we'll lease some, whatever can work for everybody. So that's the building. We have since being in front of you, probably last time, we opened a group in Europe to help some of the international logistics companies that are over there. These are just, I think you know enough about Skanell. If there's any questions, I'll just breeze through that one. Some of the significant projects we've done in Greenwood, the Pitney Bowes, the Amazon, and now the California Custom Fruits. We did the Worth Services building and the building next to it. So we have a long history with you all, and we understand the need for good wage jobs and good companies to come to Greenwood. This is the list of things that we have done privately to help develop. So roads are typically built by communities, but we've accelerated some of these things. We're widening Graham, we're building Stacy's Way. These are not things we're asking that you are paying for. These are things that we're doing already. Reconstruction, we're looking at a light at Worstville Road and Collins as well. We've extended water mains. So with an ask, this isn't an ask with us being responsible and doing our own part to get the park going. Again, the abatement's for the tenants, for the business, it's not for us. Again, this is kind of the marketing strategy. Why are we doing this? Greenwood has a great labor, and there's a need for a building to be built for that 250 on up. And that's the strategy. We do have a couple of tenants. The Puma deal right now I'll mention. I don't know if it's public or whether I should say this, but they would have come to this facility had the walls been up. And they're a very classy international company, great credit. We all know, I think, of Puma. They would have been a great tenant, but we weren't ready, and they're going to go to an existing building somewhere else. Geodis was the same way. So we missed out on two opportunities, and say we as a group, Greenwood and Skanell, from not having a building ready, but I think now is a good time with those other two buildings being leased out. So go ahead, Katie, if you got anything.
Thank you very much, that was helpful. change, and I understand very keenly the struggle with growth and like what type of growth do you want, and is it industrial to growth, and the balance of industrial, commercial, residential, ag, all of that. The thing is, I think that even though I'm probably oversimplifying, I mean, we all heard it as kids, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, and I think that's what's really great about what Greenwood has done so far. You have pockets, you have planned for where you want to have certain types of growth, and you've been really successful at it. And you're attracting a mix of small manufacturers, and you've got office and IT and R&D, and you've got all these things. But you've also identified this area as a place that's appropriate for industrial development. And as it sometimes defies comprehension for me, but I've also worked in commercial real estate before coming to CATS for over a decade. And it would shock me the way these Fortune 100 companies, these employers that you really would like in your backyard, due to a whole host of things, whether they're publicly traded or they have boards that don't give them a whole lot of notice or what have you, they simply will not, cannot, do not consider buildings that are not already in existence. Not everybody has the time to go through an entire, greenfield project that is a build-to-suit. And so, in particular, speculative development, while it's risky for you all to some degree, right? Because you don't know who the tenant is, you don't know for sure that you're going to like the user. You have Skinnell's commitment that they understand clearly that if they find a bad user, there's going to be repercussions for future development, but you still don't have this guarantee. On the other hand, as the economy tightens up, the capital is going to become much less present, especially in the middle of the country. And projects like spec development are going to be much, much harder to support, if at all. And so while the community does take a risk, so too does Skinnell. I can assure you that if this building takes a long time to fill, 3, 4, 5 years, I'm not sure that these two gentlemen will be sitting here on behalf of Skinnell, because they have their own financial reasons for wanting to build the building. So the thing is, and it's not just them as a developer, although I would argue that they are more entrenched here than maybe some who are in and out for one type of project. So this is your chance to have a spec project, to have the inventory that might attract the type of user that you want to come into your market and to be an employer here. The other thing I'll mention, I kind of touched on speed to market, which is the real estate buzzword for companies that are moving real fast and don't have time to build. The brokerage community, I thought it was an interesting anecdote, and I swear it wasn't planned, that when you had a user coming to central Indiana, and originally Greenwood was maybe looked over, a lot of times when you have these new entrants to the market, they're reliant completely on a commercial real estate community, and that group is very persuaded by what's the least risky of outcomes and the least time-consuming outcome. And so when you can show some strength in supporting projects that are slightly riskier, but with forethought, and it's an intentional strategy, I think you get a different outcome and you get different attention from that market than you might if everything's a no. And I won't pick on any since this is televised, but there are other cities in the metro area that have been very unfriendly towards not just spec development, but just development generally. And there seems to be a trend when they're overlooked. We talked a little bit about some of the profile of the tenants, so I won't spend a lot of time on there. I did want to talk a little bit about data, because I think that helps refine an understanding about what our request is here tonight and some of the data behind it. So we dug into some of the stats about Greenwood specifically where we could. Some of it's Johnson County stats, but as you're probably keenly aware, your population has grown by over 10% since 2010. And I know that growth places burden on every single one of your city resources. The good news is your per capita and median household income is higher than the growth in the county, at the state and at the national average. So things are, relatively speaking anyway, going much better in Greenwood than they are elsewhere. The total tax levy has grown by almost 12% from 2012 to 17. And your certified net assessed valuation has increased by 7.2%. We'll talk about that later, but as I know many of you when you're going through budgets are keenly aware, with property tax caps and everything else, industrial development provides a big shot to the tax base without the same types of burdens on schools and other public services that, things like residential development can do. We wanted to tackle, as I mentioned at the beginning, kind of what some of the recurring feedback and concerns have been. And so I wanted to hit them one by one. One of them is, hey, we in Greenwood, we don't have that much ground left. We'll just wait for the right projects to come along. The thing is, and Courtney touched on some of these users in the market. A lot of times, especially from out of town, they'll come in and have like an RFP that says we will only consider things that look like this. And many of them will only consider a tax abated building that's already under construction or has been developed. It's not that those are the only types of deals. Certainly there are many users who are willing to go through the whole process. But there are some, and the question is, do you want to risk missing out on a potentially great quality, economic development deal because you don't have the inventory to support it? I mentioned the reputation and the commercial real estate brokerage. The other thing I'll mention is that you're commuting, and this is where it's just Johnson County, they don't isolate it for the city, but I would suspect it's still above what's average for the state and elsewhere. You have a high proportion of Johnson County workers who are leaving the county for employment, simply because, that's typically because there just aren't enough opportunities in their backyard, because who would like to commute, a long distance unless you had to, if there were opportunities in the backyard. So that's, you look at your low unemployment rate, but it's not just that, it's these underemployed workers who are having to travel outside your county where you're not getting county option income taxes in order to find employment. So the more you develop, obviously you can drive that number down. There's always the complaints about semi-trucks, and as someone who drives up and down 65 a lot, I won't lie and say that I haven't mumbled under my breath here and there. But the concern about being in residential areas, I think, is largely maybe overstated sometimes, because not only do residents not want those semis in their neighborhoods, neither do the semi-truck drivers want to be in those neighborhoods. And in fact, not only are there industry standards with trucking associations, but there's an entire federal agency devoted to regulations that say, hey, you can't do that, and you can get fined and in all sorts of trouble for doing that. The third question here, why are we providing reduced taxes for companies when we need more police officers, fire stations, and investment in some of these quality of life items that I think Councilor Gibson was referencing earlier, parks and infrastructure and that type of thing. So again, I know this group is keenly aware, but for those following at home, a couple of years ago when property tax caps became a part of our state constitution, local government really got strapped in its ability to generate revenue to handle all of the responsibilities that have been identified for it to address. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it other than grow your assessed valuation, grow your tax base. And industrial and commercial development pay higher rates than residential, and they have lower burdens on many of these services. So when you look at the fact that the total tax levy has increased by almost 12%, and that the certified AV has increased by over 7% just for Greenwood, that is a trend that not many other communities are seeing right now. But it's one that's predicated on being supportive of thoughtful growth and strategic growth that this group can get behind. And I would submit that we believe that this is one of these types of projects. I saved the most controversial one for last, but there's this issue of wages. And it's certainly one that we hear in every market we go into, and we'll be candid, speculative development, by its very nature, we don't know who the tenant will be. Now, Skinnell's is very acutely aware of the fact that if they mess this up, they're gonna have a much harder, if not impossible, chance of filling future buildings. But even with that understood, there's still concern about the types of jobs that are being created. If there is a big warehouse component, the wages are what they are. They're just not gonna be $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year on average, although some of those positions exist. So we wanted to dig into a couple of these stats to kind of reveal maybe a little bit about the workforce. So at the county level, the Lumina Foundation, and if you haven't checked it out, I know I'm a big data geek, but they've got a great website and a lot of very municipal specific studies that look at down to the individual high schools and stuff. But so only 43.1% of Johnson County residents have an associate's degree or higher. So if you apply that to the percentage for the whole county, that's almost 90,000 people who have less than an associate's degree. Now, the data is not available for the city of Greenwood, and I would suspect that it's not, you can't use a perfect same percentage, but if you did apply it to the city of Greenwood, that'd be about 18,000 city residents with less than an associate's degree. All right, let's say that's bogus, it's way higher in Greenwood. Even if we cut that in half, we are talking about a lot of people who are in the labor force who have not yet pursued educational attainment past associate's degree. And then we dig in, I won't dive into all of it right here, but through the Lumina Foundation, you can look at even specific years of graduates at the Greenwood area schools. So there were 3, it was Greenwood Community High School, Center Grove, and Greenwood Christian Academy. And even of those graduates who went on to higher education, 57.7% of the 2013 cohort did not graduate on time. Now, hey, my husband's one of those guys that didn't graduate on time, so are a lot of my friends. And we all know people who, you know, for a variety of reasons, maybe they're working through college, it takes longer, maybe they changed their major. I mean, I started out as a comparative lit major, so that wasn't gonna get me employed, and it took me a while to figure that out. So you have that going on, but while that's going on, those people may still need employment. And something that Governor Holcomb and even Mayor Joe Hogsett in Indy have talked a lot about is that successful workforce development strategies are kind of like ABCs. First, you need to get these folks a job, and then focus on gaining skills to get a better job and finally a career. And so I would submit that I think that while perhaps industrial development, you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, being strategic and thoughtful about how you do it so that you can attract the right type of projects to the Amazons of the world that have, you know, opportunities to really grow. And if an individual wants to, they can not only finish their education while being employed there, but they can really move up the ranks to very high-paying positions is something to think about. And just because I didn't want to be too negative, we did work with Dana and the Johnson County Economic Development Group. And of course, your community does have a lot of resources that address many of these things, helping skill development of your existing employees who work here and those who are seeking employment. So with all of that, I just wanted to close. We appreciate your consideration. I know this is not an easy decision, but it also doesn't have to be as challenging as some might make it out to be. It's a thoughtful, strategic, intentional decision to provide inventory for the type of employer you might want to attract. So with that, we're here. We'd love to request your support for a 10-year real property tax abatement on this building. We've got the schedule there. It's slightly modified. And you know, again, we've kind of recapped what sort of taxes you will still be receiving even if you decide to support the abatement. So with that, I will stop talking. Happy to answer any questions, and I know Courtney would be as well, and would love to get your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? All right, thank you very much. Resolution 1906.
A resolution establishing procedures for consideration and approval of applications for tax abatement and adoption of tax abatement deduction schedules, sponsored by Campbell.
This, I asked the city attorney to draw this up. There's been some confusion on tax abatement schedules, and technically the council has actually never passed a procedure on tax abatements and a specific schedule other than what was included back in 2017. We passed a tax abatement application that included some schedules, but we never actually had anything specific to tax abatement schedules. So she's put this together, and would note that under section 3, it states that the Common Council may approve and adopt other tax abatement deduction schedules based on some criteria that's listed there. So tonight we've had a couple tax abatements come before us. One was for one schedule, one was for a different schedule. It does allow us to have different schedules, but this kind of gives people an idea, companies coming in a little better schedule and a little idea of how to go about you know, applying for a tax abatement. So that's why this is before us tonight. Any questions? I feel like a petitioner. I should have gone down front. All right. Seeing none, Miscellaneous business from the council. See none. Audience. This is if you have something you'd like to address the council about concerning business that's not on the agenda, you're welcome.
Mr. President, Brian Coyle, Assistant Fire Chief. Sorry I didn't address the council earlier. I didn't want to make my way up here and get in that line. I was afraid I'd get kicked out. But placed in front of each one of you before tonight's council meeting is a hard copy of the 2018 Greenwood Fire Department Annual Report. I believe Mr. Dine and Ms. Gibson already received those from Chief Hoggett. Also sent one of each of you a digital copy today, along with every department head and officials within the city. Excuse me. Basically, the annual report highlights not only our activities and achievements through 2018, but it also serves as statistics and performance review for us. So, on behalf of Chief Hoggett, who's not here tonight, just wanted to say thank you to the council for your continued support. If you find time to leaf through this report and you would have any questions, comments, suggestions, Chief Hoggett or I would greatly appreciate discussing those with you. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience wishing to address the council at this time? Seeing none. Other miscellaneous business, Corporation Council.
I do have a few items. We have a couple of compliance with Statement of Benefit forms, what's known as CF1s, for you to act upon, for Alta Inc. and CTW Electrical Company.
We'll start with CTW Electrical to entertain a motion to.
I move that we find them in substantial compliance.
Motion by Mr. Bates, second by Mr. Hopper. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, then Alta, entertain a motion.
I move to find Alta in substantial compliance.
Motion Mr. Hopper, second by Mr. Dine. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Both are passed unanimously.
And I have one additional, Mr. Campbell allowed us to add, and that is a conflict of interest by Mayor Mark W. Myers for his daughter Hope Myers for any interest he may have in her earnings as a part-time city employee in the Parks Department. Please accept that at a public meeting so we may file it with the state.
Do you have a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Motion Mr. Bates, second by Mr. Hopper. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anything from the controller?
Nothing.
Anything from the mayor?
I have nothing.
We are dismissed. Thank you.